Leslye Headland is begging people to launch a social media campaign in order to convince the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm to greenlight a second season of The Acolyte after the show had some of the worst viewership we've ever seen from a Star Wars show. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Also, hit that like button so we beat the YouTube algorithm and more people are able to view this. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And Leslye Headland did a post-season interview with Collider where she begged for a second season. This is what she was asked by Collider's Maggie Lovett. Shifting gears, one of the most popular questions that I got to ask you from Twitter was, what do fans need to do to ensure that we get a season 2? This is how Headland answered. Truly, any online support and love you can send the show. It's a little tricky because of the way that the internet works, but if you enjoyed the show and you want to see more of the story, any support that you can give the show on social media platforms would be super helpful. She then added, sending love to the cast too. You've seen what Hayden Christensen went through. He's getting the love now, but give the love now if you enjoyed the performances, even if you were kind of like whatever on the show. If you enjoyed the performances, get on their social media, let them know that you love them or that you support them for that, or that the performances were great. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you were whatever on the show, why would you think that the performances were great? I mean, I guess you could think that the actors did a decent job despite the terrible narrative and the terrible story, or you thought it was like blasé or boring. I guess you could say that, but the performances in this show weren't that great. I think Master Soul here, what is his name? Lee Jung Jae was pretty much the only one who was kind of captivating at all. I guess you could argue that the actress who plays Mother Anastasia, she actually had some on-screen presence. But other than that, I didn't think the performances were all that moving. Thought they were very flat and didn't actually do a lot to bring you in to the show. I guess you could say Manny Jacinto did a decent job, I guess, with Chimere. But Amanda Stenberg was not impressive. The woman who plays Vernestra Rowe was absolutely terrible. Very stiff. Did not come off very well at all. Anyways, Headland then says this: encourage your friends to watch the show. A lot of my work has been word of mouth. We were talking about the review bombing, so just telling people don't pay attention to the IMDb score. Yes, don't pay attention to the IMDb score where all the people are saying this show is absolutely hot garbage, and it's constantly seeing less and less people watch it as you got further into the season. I didn't look into what the IMDb score was as I wrote this video, but I know it was hovering around like that 3.0 mark, and that is about where the actual mean was for the show. And I think the majority of all votes were 1 out of 10 as well. People did not like the show. We're expressing that. And Leslye Headland doesn't want you to see what other people thought about that. That's why she's telling you not to pay attention to the IMDb score. And she's claiming that it is quote unquote review bombing, when in reality, it's just people expressing their opinion and noting that this show is objectively terrible and objectively bad. And there is a thing as objectivity when it comes to art. That's why they indeed have awards, because you can have standards on how well a story is, how well a film production is created, the cinematography, etc. We have awards for that. Those awards have obviously been co-opted to push woke ideologues, push woke ideological messaging in films and television shows, but that's not how they were originally created. We originally did indeed award films, award filmmakers, award television shows, television creators, actors, etc. for actually excellence and achieving a great thing when they were making whatever they happened to be making. You think of movies like Gladiator, like Braveheart, like the original Star Wars, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Those things are indeed at the peak of filmmaking, and they deserve those awards because they are objectively good. So Leslye Headland clearly trying to paint people who are actually criticizing the show as quote unquote review bombers, and you shouldn't listen to what they have to say. It's just disingenuous. She then stated this, though: if you enjoyed it, tell people. It kind of seems that it's sort of basic, but I think What's interesting is that nowadays, if you like a show, you're very rarely going to go online and be like, I liked this show. That's absolutely absurd. Does not make any sense whatsoever. You see people actually sharing their love for shows all the time on social media if they actually do indeed love it. In fact, you see it with the Acolyte too. There are people that are going out there and saying that they like this show. Clearly, one has to question how you can like the show when it is so objectively terrible, but there are indeed people saying that. So this idea that people aren't going out and saying that they like shows is just not true. People say that they like shows all the time. You can watch reviewers, people like OMB Reviews, people like The Critical Drinker, people like Disparu. They will tell you when indeed they like something, but they'll also tell you when something is absolutely garbage. So this is just not true whatsoever. The evidence is overwhelmingly against her in this case. Lovett then said this: you just watch it and move on. And Headland reiterated what she had to say. She says, you watch it, you move on. Maybe you mention it to somebody over dinner and be like, oh, I just binged this show. It was fun. Lee Jung-jae is an awesome actor. It usually comes up that way as opposed to going online and saying, I love this show. So if you did love the show, then pivot and be appreciative. That's just absolutely not true. I think you're more likely to actually say that you like the show on social media rather than in a conversation over dinner. I mean, how often are you going out to eat to dinner with friends? You might be going out quite often. When you're an adult, you've got kids, you're not usually going out to dinner that often because it's just usually not in your budget. You're spending your money elsewhere. And I think especially in days like this, with the increasing in prices and everything, I think a lot of people have decided to cut going out to eat in many cases. So I think you're probably more likely to say you like the show over social media than you would talking to someone over dinner. Now, if she said if you're going to like a party, like a 4th of July party or something like that, I could see that because people do go to parties, you go to birthday parties, and those things still are happening. They're still happening regularly. 4th of July, like I said, we just had that. Labor Day is coming up. So that would make more sense to me than you're going out to eat at dinner. I think that happens maybe like once a month if you have something planned. Even if I look at what like my parents do, they have like their old bowling league or something like that. They usually try and meet up with their old bowling friends at least maybe once a quarter or something like that. But you're not usually doing that very regularly or even once a week, which is what how this show was coming out. Anyways, moving on. She goes on and says, by the way, I know this is already happening, even though I'm not online. People have been sending me fun tweets and beautiful artwork and all of the ship comments, and I'm absolutely loving it. So she's literally saying people are unlikely to do this. She says she's not online, and then she's like, oh, look at all these people actually saying that they are liking the show online. So she's contradicting herself. She's proving her own hypothesis wrong here, actually admitting that people do indeed go and post online that they like things that they like. She's literally saying she's being sent it to her. And then she's saying she's not online, but somehow she's looking at things that are posted online. So she clearly is online. She probably has a burner account, and she just doesn't have a primary account, but she's clearly online and paying attention to this stuff. She's clearly saying it's being sent to her, right? I know it's out there, but if you aren't doing it, I would encourage you to do it and support the show. So thank you again. That goes back to her begging people to try and kind of start this social media campaign to promote the show. So doesn't look good. If you're having to make these kind of statements, it's unlikely that your show will indeed be greenlit. You're trying to create some kind of fake momentum behind the show when the actual numbers say that people aren't actually watching the show. And we'll get to that. It does not look good for Leslye Headland getting to cash in another $180 million budget for a second season of The Acolyte. It's not looking good for her and her payday. And she kind of already hinted at this, that it was unlikely that a season 2 would happen. She said this in an interview with The Nerdist when she was asked, do you know if you're definitely getting a season 2? She says, no, I have no idea. Well, not that I have no idea. I would say there are conversations, and I don't know when that will happen. I don't know when that decision will be made. So it didn't clearly they are maybe having discussions about it, but they aren't really sure whether or not they're actually going to pull the trigger. And then previously she said this, the Entertainment Weekly at the end of June. I'll tell you my philosophy on first seasons. Something that I've noticed is first seasons will end on what should have been the break into Act 2. It feels like everyone's really expecting to get a second season, and I don't feel that's a good idea. I think you should put everything you can into the first season. and give the audience a nice resolution that feels satisfying, but enough nods to mysteries that you would want to see a second season. So it's a little bit of both. You don't want to leave it so wrapped up that, like Obi-Wan or a standalone miniseries, that there's no reason to watch a second season. But I think there's enough stuff in the last few episodes that you would want to have answered. I don't think she actually follows this philosophy whatsoever. If you watch the show, this is not what she actually did. There is no resolution whatsoever. There's just a bunch of like, what was even the point of this show altogether? Why was this even made? What were you trying to convey? What was the actual structure of the story? What did we even watch? What is even happening here? So again, just more comments that reiterate that this show is unlikely to get a second season, I think. And it's not surprising that she's begging now, as I said, because the numbers are not good. In the first week, according to Nielsen, the 2-episode premiere only garnered 444 million minutes watched. In its second week, the show's viewership fell to 370 million minutes. And now in its third week, the show has fallen off Nielsen's top 10 chart. Like you can see, it's not on here anymore. It's literally not there. The lowest ranked show, the 10th ranked show, King of Collectibles, The Golden Touch on Netflix, has 298 million minutes watched. That means the Acolyte had less minutes watched than that show. It was less than 298 million minutes watched. People were tuning out of this show. They were not staying with it. They were tuning out, and it wasn't bringing in new people. There was no word of mouth for Leslye Headland and her series, The Acolyte. But what is getting word of mouth is my good friend John De La Rose's graphic novel here, The Hidden Emperor, an Ayla Wren sci-fi graphic novel. We are seeing it has already been funded here, over $12,163. I really enjoyed the first story in this kind of series that he is creating here. Overmind, I think it is his best work, so I'm really excited for this one. If you want to know more about it, this is the synopsis. It says here, Ayla Wren, agent of the Terran Imperium, returns to face a new sinister plot against the Imperium. Something is amiss with the Emperor of Mankind. Ayla Wren discovers he's been replaced by a clone who's intentionally sabotaging the Imperium on behalf of the evil Scorpio Alliance. But worse, the Scorpio Alliance knows she knows, and that means blackmail. Ayla is forced to find a secret super weapon that could unleash devastation on the Imperium. So sounds like there is an actual story here. I'm really excited for it. Like I said, Overmind was, I think, in my opinion, John De La Rose's best work. I'm really excited for what he's doing here. He's actually going to be also introducing his version of the Space Marines and kind of getting to see them. And so I'm really excited to what he's doing. Lots of like interesting world building and a huge alternative to what we're seeing happening in pop culture with Star Wars, with things like Warhammer. So he is offering alternative here, and I think he is doing a really good job with it. And so if you want to back that, I will have a link to that Kickstarter in the description below so you can check that out. So I think he's going to have a lot of success with that. Meanwhile, does not look like Leslye Headland is going to have much success with her social media campaign, as people are not watching this. They're tuning out, and she's now begging people to try and get a second season. All of that adds up to me that this is not going to go well for her. And maybe Lucasfilm has finally figured out that they need to cut their losses and stop pushing this absolutely disgusting ideology and hiring people like Leslye Headland that push this ideology into their shows. But it wouldn't surprise me if they do indeed double down. But at the end of the day, that just allows more people to see what kind of absolute evil that they're pushing and say, nah, not interested in that. And so people aren't actually tuning in and watching it and being indoctrinated by it. And all we're seeing is the Walt Disney Company burn money and waste it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.